I'm Caleb Brooks with the AHSAA Radio Network. I'm at Opp High School. I'm joined by Coach Lorrie Harrison, the head cheer coach here for Opp. And Coach, talking to you a little bit before, you were a cheer coach before. You were at Northview High School, and then you make the move over here to Opp, and you were telling me that y'all didn't really do much competition at Northview, and you didn't know much about it. And then all of a sudden you move over here to Opp, and this is a place that has such history and cheer, and you take over here as the head coach, and now you've won 5 titles here. Y'all have won the last 3 titles. And, for you, when you had to start learning about cheer competition and had to kind of learn, what all went into cheer competition, I mean, what was that like for you to really see what all of it was like as a coach and everything?
I think for the very short season of my life that I was at Northview, I was very young. I was 21. I was just trying to survive with 32 cheerleaders. And so I left Northview, went to Florala, and did not coach there. And then I came to Opp, and the principal asked me to, obviously come in and coach. And to begin with, for the first 2 years, we did not compete here. Opp had competed a little bit prior to that, and then we just decided we weren't ready for that. They weren't really physically ready to go out and compete in the state competition. So 2 years passed, and we, as a team, we engaged in learning harder skills, and every year it has just progressed to, the group prior to the new group each year has set a bar for each group to get better. And, I think back to our very first year competition season was not great. I mean, Opp came in, we placed 5th in the state that year. There were 13 in our division. And, we kind of felt defeated, but we also knew that we weren't going to go into it winning first that year. And so then the very next year is when Opp won our first state title, and that was in 2012. And it was a great feeling for those girls to see how hard they had worked in the year prior to win state that first year in 2012. So just learning new skills. Cheerleading is constantly evolving. Yeah. I mean, from 2012, I watch our routine to now, and the skills that we did in 2012 are completely different. And we're, much as a program in general, through any school cheer, if you're going to compete and be successful, the difficulty is changing almost daily of what teams are able to do.
You mentioned coming here and you had to be asked to be the cheer coach, and it's not like you came here and said, hey, I'd like to do this. And so thinking back on that time and then accepting the position, I mean, how grateful are you now to have the success that you've had as a cheer coach, from going from potentially not even doing it to now, doing what you guys have been able to accomplish here?
I definitely think it's a blessing. I tell people all the time, they're not hard to coach. They're great kids. They work hard. Their parents instill in them good values. And so it's easy for me to just step in. And a lot of times people say, they want to say, well, Lorrie Harrison's the coach of that. But really, it's all of their parents and all of them that strive to be great. And so it's no accolades to me. It's really their hard work and what they do to be great.
I went to school at LBW for a year and was around all the programs, Andalusia, Opp, Strawn, and coming here, I went to some football games and started finding out a little bit about y'all's cheer program and learning about winning the state championship and really everything getting going. And so have you kind of seen the interest in cheer grow here in the Opp area since you took over as the coach?
I think so. I think we have more girls that are interested in being more involved, in tumbling classes and just learning how to stunt early on. I will say that we don't have a large set of numbers to try out for cheerleading at the high school level, and I think that's because it's difficult to make. We have such high standards. If you can't do certain things, you're not going to make it. For our tryouts, a lot of schools around here, they just have basic tryouts. You learn a dance, you learn a cheer, you go try out. Well, that's not how it is here. Here you have to tumble. You have a whole week of clinic where we stunt. We condition just like we would, or maybe even harder than a traditional school year, just to make sure that we're getting who wants to really be a cheerleader. So it's hard. It's hard to make it up.
What are some of the differences? And as a coach, preparing your girls for a Friday night, like you have this Friday coming up with a big one for y'all, Andalusia, a big rivalry game. But sure, what are some of the differences in preparing for that? And then, preparing for the cheer competition and when you go out there and only have, that 2.5 minutes to perform?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, there really isn't a big difference for me. It is for them because it's their bodies and it's a lot harder. But I expect them to do the best they can all the time. Whether they're at a football game, I want them to be the sharpest that they can be, the loudest. Their job is to engage the crowd. And if they're not doing that, then they're not doing their job. And then at competition, when we're practicing for competition season, their job is to perform that routine to their best ability. So I always expect them to do their best, no matter what we're practicing for.
And, you know, I mean, I see going around the different games, cheerleaders before the game are performing, during the game performing. Do you kind of use that as an extra practice in front of a crowd, you know, and, you know, say, look, go out here and perform the way you would for a competition?
I do, yes, I definitely expect them to do their best all the time. And to think about, would you perform like that if you were at a state competition? But at the same time, our football season, we practice hard for it. We practice hard for pep rallies. We spend a lot of time planning, and those things are just as important to me as winning a state title. Like, I want the girls to go out there and feel like they are engaging the crowd on a Friday night and the crowd is responding to them. Or at a pep rally, you know, if one week we don't have a good pep rally, we come back in and we reevaluate and say, okay, why was the student body not cheering with us? Because that's what we're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to involve school spirit. And so, you know, we're constantly finding new ways to try to do something better.
Well, I can tell you sometimes you don't need to take that to heart, because sometimes the way the football team plays is why they're not, you know, cheering along with you or not. So, you know, it's sometimes going to be, if they're not playing good, then nobody wants to cheer. You know, I can tell you that from being a fan, you know. So, but, you know, to have a program like you have and to now really have built it into what it is, which is just consistent contender, you know, every single year. Knowing that you guys have a target on your back when you head to that competition every single year, and you're really the standard. I mean, people look at Opp Cheer as the standard right now. So what does that mean to you to know that you have, you know, helped, you had a big helping hand in building this program into really being the standard in the state of Alabama?
I think that, again, it is a blessing to know that Opp, our community, is represented so well by these group of girls. And when I say that they are a good representation, I don't mean that they're just a good representation because they're good cheerleaders. They're truly hard workers. They're some of the hardest workers around the school. They serve in community projects. They're always willing to go that extra mile. And so, yes, it is good to be the target. You know, you want to always strive to be better at something. And I think that these girls definitely do a good job of that, on and off the field, on and off the court. I mean, the mats, wherever. If they're cheering at a volleyball game, if they're cheering at a basketball game, they're always working hard. You
know, people like to compare sports. I like to say hitting in baseball is the hardest thing to do because of your reaction time. Basketball, shooting. To me, cheer is one of the hardest things too, because for that 2.5 minutes, that's the only 2.5 minutes that you have to do all this different stuff, and you better be perfect with it. And so, I mean, would you kind of attest to that as a cheer coach, that it is one of the hardest things in sports to do, is to everybody be together for 2 minutes and 30 seconds and be perfect like you need to be?
Definitely. You have to have timing, technique, all of those things. And, you know, sometimes we get caught up in difficulty and trying to be the most difficult team, but really you want to be difficult, but at the same time you want to be clean in what you're doing. So I agree. I don't think that we can argue, you know, some people are like, well, this sport's harder than this sport. I think they all go hand in hand. We all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses at some point where it's not necessarily as hard as something else.
Yeah.
For sure.
And, you know, you talk about difficulty. Obviously, your routine's going to be graded off of how difficult it is and then how you execute it. And it's kind of similar to me in football, where you can throw all these blitzes at somebody and look cute, but if your team doesn't know where to be and how to do it correctly, it's not going to matter. And so, as a coach, how do you find the balance between maybe trying to do something real difficult, but then knowing we don't want to make it too difficult on them, because if we're not good at it in the performance, there's not really a point in doing it.
That's right. Well, we practice difficulty a lot during the off season. During the summer, we start working on skills that we may or may not use throughout the year. And a lot of times, you know, we are performing things that we hope to use, but we may not get to if the whole team can't use them. In our season, for competition season, in the routine itself, we will first set the bar really high and say, this is what we're going to do. And then about 2 weeks before we, you know, go to state, or actually last year we started regionals, so we have to compete in regionals first. Those stunts aren't hitting, so then we'll take it back down a level, because obviously we want to execute first. You know, that's the most important.
And, you know, you mentioned starting, you know, regionals now, and that's a good thing to me, because it means more teams are getting involved, you know, and so now you have to have that extra step. And so how good is it to now have a regionals, and really now a place where you can go and practice for that state competition and already be in front of a crowd before really having to be in the meat of it?
I will say that I think all of the girls would agree that had competed prior to last year, going to regionals was a huge benefit. I mean, the nerves are kind of out because you've already been that one time. And then us doing game day, that was another time we got to be out in front of a crowd, you know, to be judged on. And so we actually, before we took the floor last year for our traditional routine, we had been judged 3 times already, 2 times at regionals and then 1 time for game day that morning. And so I think their nerves were just a lot less, they weren't as anxious as they would have been if it would have just been their first time ever taking that floor at Wallace State for the state competition.
Yeah. And, how often do you guys start doing a routine? Maybe you're doing this and you take something out of it. You just say, we don't really like that, so we're just going to take that out and we'll add this in.
Daily. A lot. I mean, I might see something, they might be doing something too well.
Yeah.
And if they're doing it too good, then that means we need to increase what we're doing to make it better, to make it harder,
So you don't ever let your girls just settle for, oh, you know what, we've perfected this, we're just going to stick with it. You want to take a step up no matter what,
That's right.
each time. Yeah, and I guess that's how you've ended up with all these state championships over the year. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me come in, interrupt your practice, and sit down with y'all, talk about your program. Good luck to y'all as you finish out football season and get ready for competition later on this year.
Thank you so much.